Hey guys, tonight we slip beneath the velvet veil of history and into a century where crowns weighed heavier than hearts and whispers in royal chambers echoed louder than cannon fire. You're sitting beside a flickering hearth in a drafty stone keep, your cloak still damp from the misty ride-in. You lean just a little closer, because this isn't just a war. It's a slow-burn feud between nations, a family squabble turned deadly. It's betrayal in silk stockings, battlefield kisses blown from behind banners, and letters sealed with lies and rose-scented wax. The 100 Years' War wasn't one war. It was a tangled mess of them, sewn together with blood, ambition, and badly aged treaties. If this helped you wind down, maybe drop a like and subscribe. It's free, easy, and totally optional forever. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing which corners of the world we're drifting off in. So breathe deep, let the fire crackle, let the candlelight dance against the carved wood beams above, and follow the thread back to a night where kings dreamed of France. And you begin to wonder if they should have just stayed in bed. It starts, as many bad ideas do, with a royal family tree that needs pruning. You're in France, early 14th century. The Capetian dynasty has been ruling for centuries, handing the crown from father to son like a very expensive game of hot potato. But then the male line fizzles out. No sons, just whispers of daughters and distant cousins with suspiciously English accents. And right there, perched awkwardly on the edge of this dynastic gap, is Edward III of England, your guy. A teenage king who, depending on who you ask, either has a totally valid claim to the French throne, or is just a cocky teenager with a sword and too many advisors named Richard. See, Edward's mom was a French princess, daughter of Philip IV no less. That's a pretty strong link, but French law has this fun little wrinkle called Salic law, which says women can't inherit the throne, and crucially, neither can their sons. Convenient, right? So when Charles IV of France dies in 1328 without a male heir, the French nobles go full defensive mode. They politely ignore Edward's claim and hand the crown to Philip VI, a cousin from the senior male line. Is it legal? Debatable. Is it going to cause problems? Oh yes. At first, Edward shrugs it off. He's got enough on his plate. Scottish invasions, teenage rebellion, wardrobe malfunctions involving too much velvet. But a few years later, things shift. Trade disputes flare. French pirates mess with English merchants. Philip supports the Scots. And somewhere between a shipment of wool and a broken truce, Edward decides, you know what? Let's do a little light conquest. You're in 1337 now. Edward formally claims the French crown, and just like that, the 100 Years' War is born. Although no one's calling it that yet. They're too busy sharpening pikes and designing coats of arms that look cool on banners. But here's the thing. This isn't some grand organized war like in the movies. It's a petty, messy family dispute dragged out over 116 years, with long pauses, sudden bursts, and the occasional plague. Think more on-again, off-again X than blockbuster trilogy. The first moves are tentative. Small naval raids, skirmishes along the coast. England has the better ships, but France has the better real estate. And both sides are secretly hoping the other will just give up and go home. But of course they don't. That would be far too reasonable. Instead, both sides start hunting for allies, like they're forming fantasy football teams. Edward courts the Holy Roman Empire. Philip plays footsie with the Low Countries. There's bribery. There's flattery. There are marriage proposals flung around like confetti. And in the middle of it all, You, tramping through muddy roads with a pack of soldiers who only half understand why they're fighting. One thinks it's about wool, another says it's about taxes, a third swears it's revenge for some long-forgotten insult involving a goat. There's a weird energy in the air, half pageantry, half panic. Nobles polish their armor and compose songs about valor. Peasants just try to stay out of the way. And somewhere, a monk is already keeping notes, muttering, "Historians still argue whether Edward's claim was ever truly legitimate." Meanwhile, the French try a flex of their own. They seize English lands in Gascony, a major economic hit. That does it. Edward gears up for a full invasion, dragging thousands of longbowmen, knights, and unlucky camp followers across the Channel. And if you're picturing neat ranks and orderly marches, bless you. Reality is more muddy. Horses get stuck. Supplies run thin. The English try to pay their way with IOUs and looted church silver. At one point, someone seriously considers eating a war horse. Still, morale stays weirdly high. There's a belief, or at least a well-polished lie, that this is a just war, that God's on their side, that kings don't lie and crowns don't rust. Oh, and speaking of God, a cheeky little papal envoy tries to broker peace early on. He's got scrolls, incense, and a serious God complex. But neither side listens. Too much pride. Too many banners already unfurled. Back in England, the war becomes a fashion trend. Knights host mock battles called pas d'armes to show off. Ladies sew favors into sleeves. Children play storm the castle in the mud behind markets. It's war fever, sanitized, stylized, and deeply misunderstood. But as you'll see soon, the war won't stay clean for long. You wake to the clinking of armor and the smell of damp wool. The air hums with nervous energy, and your boots squish unpleasantly as you step out into the dewy grass. It's 1346, and you're part of something much larger now. An actual invasion force. Edward III isn't just poking around the edges anymore. He's going in. Edward's about 33 at this point, a king in his prime with golden hair, a sharp jawline, and a tendency to overspend on banners. He's already raided Normandy and laid waste to the countryside with a kind of casual strategic cruelty. It's called a chevauchée. Part scorched earth, part psychological warfare, part look what I can do with 10,000 men and a vague claim to the throne. You pass villages still smoldering, fields trampled flat, orchards stripped clean. Chickens have fled the scene. Even the goats look traumatized. And then it happens. The moment Edward decides to stop running and fight, his army sets up near the village of Crécy, choosing high ground with narrow approaches and a decent view. It's like he's daring the French to charge uphill into a wall of longbows and attitude. You help dig shallow trenches. You stack sharpened stakes in front of the archers. You eat dried fish and try to ignore the way your stomach churns like a nervous cat. The French arrived looking like they've just walked out of a tapestry. Capes, crests, and more colors than a child's birthday cake. There's even a contingent of Genoese crossbowmen brought in for extra spice. King Philip VI is confident, maybe too confident. Then the sky goes strange. The day of the battle, August 26th, rolls in under clouds like bruised velvet. A thunderstorm lashes the fields, soaking everyone to the bone. Your bowstring gets damp, your boots squelch, and somewhere nearby, a knight sneezes so violently he dislodges his helmet plume. But the English archers, all 6,000 of them, know their timing. They let the Genoese crossbowmen fire first, then send a flurry of longbow arrows, so fast It feels like the sky is shedding feathers. The Genoese falter. They fall back. Philip, watching from his golden perch, decides this is cowardice and orders his knights to charge through them. Which is, let's be honest, not a great look for team cohesion. What follows is chaos. Horses panic. Men trip over dying Genoese. The French nobility hurl themselves uphill like it's prom night and Edward's on stage. And still, those longbows keep humming. Arrow after arrow whistles through the air, many with little paper prayers tied to the shafts, mostly wishing for pay, glory, or just not dying horribly. Edward watches coolly from a nearby windmill, sipping wine and consulting his commanders like he's hosting a dinner party. His teenage son, the Black Prince, yes, that's what they call him, like some edgy middle school goth, gets his first real taste of battle. At one point, the fighting gets so intense that someone suggests sending in reinforcements to help him. Edward replies, "Let the boy win his spurs." And he does. The young prince survives, fights bravely, and probably earns a few new scars to show off later. The French, meanwhile, break apart. Their army collapses in waves, their elite knights scattered, many trampled by their own side. Philip himself flees with a dislocated shoulder and a shattered ego. You survive. Just. Your bowstring's frayed, your cloak is bloodied, mostly not yours, you think, and your left boot squishes in a way that strongly suggests something died in it. Crécy is a turning point, not just a win, but a blow to the old ways. The myth of the invincible knight is pierced, literally, by arrows shot from a distance by men without titles. It's not romantic, it's efficient, and a little depressing if you spent your whole childhood dreaming of armor. Here's a fun fringe fact. Some say the English longbowmen gave the V sign after the battle, 2 fingers held up in mockery, as if to say, "Still got these." It's probably not true, but it's a cheeky image. Mud-streaked archers flipping the bird at nobility. After the blood dries, Edward marches to Calais, a port city fortified like a paranoid noble's diary. It's here the siege begins, and it drags on. 11 months of catapults, starvation, and awkward diplomatic messages delivered by sweaty horsemen. You settle in for the long haul. You grow a beard. You get to know rats on a first-name basis. You watch Calais slowly shrink into silence. Eventually, in a scene straight out of a medieval soap opera, the city surrenders. But Edward wants drama. He demands 6 of Calais' leading citizens walk out in nothing but their shirts, ropes around their necks, ready for execution. It's said that Queen Philippa of Hainaut, Edward's wife, steps in at the last minute, tearfully begging for mercy. And because even war has room for romantic gestures, Edward relents. The burghers live, Calais falls. And you? You finally get a hot meal and a tent without holes in the roof. Progress. But then, something darker comes on the wind. You're not the only traveler in these muddy roads. Hitching a ride on fleeing rats, hiding in the folds of cloaks and beneath wagon wheels, the plague begins its quiet march across Europe. The Black Death doesn't care about politics. It doesn't pause for truces. It doesn't respect armor or crowns. By 1348, it's everywhere. The war pauses, not by treaty, but by terror. Entire villages vanish. Armies disband without orders. Corpses pile faster than wood for pyres. You start to wonder if the real enemy wasn't across the channel, but under your skin. Historians still argue whether the plague helped cool tensions or simply delayed the inevitable. Either way, the 100 Years' War becomes, for a time, the not happening much war. And you? You lay low, wait out the sickness, sharpen your blade in silence, because something tells you this isn't over. You emerge from the fog of plague years older, thinner, and with a newfound appreciation for the smell of soap. Not that anyone's using much of it. It's now the early 1350s, and while the Black Death has done its morbid little dance across Europe, the war hasn't exactly died. It's just been brooding. You return to a battlefield that feels less like an epic stage and more like a tired loop. Raids, skirmishes, sieges, repeat. But something has shifted. You notice it in the way commanders speak more cautiously, in how the nobility keep one eye on their coin purses and the other on their physicians. Death, it seems, has humbled even the proud. Still, the hunger for territory and vengeance simmers under the surface. France is trying to stitch itself back together after plague-fueled chaos. England is reloading, rearming, and very much not done playing empire. So Edward III sends his son, yes, the same teenage Black Prince from Crécy, only now taller, moodier, and with much better armor, back to France. This time he's raiding deeper into French lands, torching towns and collecting loot like he's doing medieval side quests. He leads a terrifying chevauchée across the southwest. Burn, pillage, leave before the rent is due. It's the English strategy in a nutshell. And this leads us to 1356. You're somewhere near Poitiers. The Black Prince and his army, outnumbered and cut off from reinforcements, are preparing for battle again. And you're right in the thick of it. Let's be honest. Morale's low. Supplies are thin. Horses are exhausted. But the prince has a plan, and it involves terrain. He picks a nice little defensive pocket between hedges, vineyards, and ditches. It's scenic and strategically sound. Pinterest would approve. On the other side, King John II of France shows up with a massive army. We're talking maybe 2 to 3 times the size of yours. He's feeling confident, maybe a little too confident. He wants a proper, chivalric battle. But Prince Edward? He wants results. So as the French approach, the English unleash their longbowmen once again. Arrows whistle through the vines. French knights charge, only to get tangled in the terrain. It's Crécy all over again, but sweatier, angrier, and with more shouting in French. The French cavalry tries to flank. Doesn't work. They try a second wave. Still doesn't work. Then the French king himself, yes, King John, charges into battle with his teenage son beside him. It's brave. It's dramatic. It's not a great idea. The English counter. The French royal standard goes down. Chaos. The king is surrounded. His sword is broken. And then something absolutely surreal happens. King John surrenders. Personally. On the battlefield. To a bunch of English soldiers, one of whom gently offers him a bottle of wine. Because even in war, hydration matters. Now, here's the quirky bit. King John is treated like an honored guest. He's brought back to England, lodged in luxurious captivity, and even goes on hunting trips. He plays chess with nobles. He's basically the fanciest hostage in history. You half expect him to open a spa? The English demand a massive ransom, like ruin your kingdom levels of gold. And France, bleeding from the plague and war losses, can barely scrape together the down payment. A treaty is signed in 1360, the Treaty of Bretigny, and it gives England a massive chunk of territory in France. It also officially ends Edward's claim to the French throne on paper. But paper doesn't hold swords or grudges. France never really accepts the treaty. Local resistance smolders in the countryside. Guerrilla bands, disillusioned knights, and unpaid mercenaries known as the Free Companies, roam like wolves, attacking towns, robbing churches, and occasionally throwing really weird parties in castles they temporarily borrow. You join a group defending a village from one of these mercenary bands. They've painted their horses in stripes, wear stolen ecclesiastical robes as battle gear, and shout Latin phrases none of them understand. You begin to wonder if you're in a war or a very dangerous medieval theater troupe. Meanwhile, back in England, Edward III's glory starts to fade. His beloved queen dies. His heir, the Black Prince, falls mysteriously ill, likely with dysentery or a wasting disease. And as the years drag on, the once mighty English war machine starts to squeak and sputter. Historians still argue whether the Treaty of Bretigny was a master stroke of diplomacy or just a long theatrical pause. What's clear is that it doesn't hold. By the late 1360s, France, under King Charles VI the Wise, starts to fight back. He's no battlefield warrior, but he's clever. He avoids open battle, uses hit-and-run tactics, and slowly retakes territory. It's less romantic than charging with lances, but it works. You see cities flip back to French control like coins tossed in a fountain. Gascony, Poitou, Normandy, piece by piece, the gains England bled for begin to vanish. The tide turns not with trumpets, but with quiet strategy and local resistance. Turns out, you don't need to win the war all at once. Just make it too expensive to keep fighting. By the time Edward III dies in 1377, England's grip on France has loosened. His grandson, a boy named Richard II, takes the throne. You're not optimistic. He's 10. And France? France is healing. Slowly. Unevenly. But healing. Still, there's a long way to go. And if you're wondering what happened to the Black Prince, well, he never got to be king. He died in 1376, 1 year before his father. All that glory, all those battles, all that muddy drama, and in the end, just a carved tomb and a very fashionable funeral. But don't get too sentimental. This story is just warming up again. You find yourself drifting through France again, older now, maybe wiser, maybe just more used to the smell of damp leather. It's the 1380s, and the 100 Years' War is in one of its famously awkward, not quite over, not quite raging phases. England's licking its wounds. France is stretching, yawning, and slowly remembering how to throw a punch. King Charles V of France, the wise one from earlier, has died. His legacy? A France that's less on fire than usual, thanks to savvy commanders and a healthy avoidance of the whole die gloriously on horseback approach. But he leaves behind a son who is, well, complicated. You meet Charles VI as a boy, sweet-faced and solemn, with enormous shoes to fill. He becomes king at 11, crowned in Reims with all the incense and gold leaf they can muster. But behind the velvet curtains, the power is in the hands of his uncles, especially the Duke of Burgundy, who has the personality of a tax auditor and the ambition of a Bond villain. At first, Charles seems like he might rise above it. He takes the reins young, throws grand tournaments, wears stunning outfits, and generally looks like the kind of guy who should be sipping wine in stained glass windows. Then the madness starts. It creeps in quietly. A strange stare here, a panic attack there. But in 1392, it fully breaks through. Charles is leading a small campaign when, on a hot afternoon, a barefoot man in rags dashes toward him on the road, shouting apocalyptic warnings. Moments later, something in the king snaps. He turns on his own escort with his sword, killing several men before collapsing in a fit. It's not heat stroke, it's not possession, it's something deeper. And now you're living in a country ruled by a man who sometimes forgets who he is. Sometimes he screams at shadows. Sometimes he refuses to bathe, convinced his flesh is made of glass. And sometimes, rarely, he returns to lucidity, full of remorse, asking after those he hurt. It's heartbreaking, it's terrifying, and it throws France into political freefall. Because here's the kicker. The king's mental illness doesn't disqualify him from ruling, not officially. So power shuffles between dukes, cousins, and in-laws like a very dangerous game of musical chairs. The Duke of Orleans, the king's brother, and the Duke of Burgundy become the main contenders. Both want control over the royal council. Both have armies. Both have mustaches that could pierce steel. You're stuck watching as Paris transforms into a courtly madhouse. Banquets by day, poisonings by night, and rumors spreading faster than the plague ever did. Meanwhile, across the channel, England's got its own mess. Richard II, the moody boy king, has grown into a dramatic adult with a flair for tyranny and an unfortunate tendency to exile anyone who disagrees with him. Eventually, his cousin Henry Bolingbroke decides enough is enough and usurps the throne in 1399. Just like that, Richard is imprisoned and him conveniently dies in custody. Now Henry IV is king, but his claim is shaky, his health is worse, and his son is a teenager with a wild streak. This new prince, Henry of Monmouth, will become very important. But for now, he's mostly sneaking out of the palace and getting into tavern fights. Back in France, the Burgundian-Orleanist feud reaches peak chaos. In 1407, the Duke of Orleans is very publicly murdered in the streets of Paris, ambushed, hacked to pieces, and left in a pile of velvet and arterial regret. The Duke of Burgundy doesn't even deny it. He just shrugs and says, "Yeah, I did that, but for justice." And the country splits in two. Civil war breaks out. Burgundians versus Armagnacs, named after the allies of the Orleans family. The capital swings back and forth like a drunken seesaw. Towns declare allegiance based on who's nearest and least likely to torch the granary. You try to stay neutral. You fail. Everyone fails. Even monasteries start locking their doors. In the countryside, peasants are dragged into the mess. Taxes go up. Fields are trampled. Churches are looted. And through it all, Charles VI sits in his palace, stroking empty air and occasionally asking where his queen went, even when she's sitting right beside him. One quirky fact: during his lucid periods, Charles VI was obsessed with playing cards. It's said he had decks custom painted with saints, devils, and astrological signs. Some historians think this was an attempt to divine the future. Others think it was just a king trying to control something, anything, in a world gone mad. And yet, through all this madness, England sees an opportunity. By 1413, Henry IV dies. His son, Prince Hal, the tavern-brawling prodigy, becomes Henry the Wolf. And he's not playing around. No more civil spats. No more waiting. He looks across the channel and sees a divided France, a mad king, and a throne still up for grabs. It's Agincourt or bust. Historians still argue whether Henry V genuinely believed he had a divine right to the French crown or was just using it as political fuel. What's clear is this: he's ready to go full medieval. And you start packing again, because when kings go to war, so do the rest of us, whether we're ready or not. The sea air slaps you awake, cold and salty, as Henry V's attitude toward diplomacy. It's 1415, and you're standing on the deck of a ship bound for France. Again. Except this time the vibe is different, sharper, like the edge of a dagger tucked behind a prayer book. Henry VIII isn't just marching for plunder, he's after legitimacy. He wants France, all of it. Not just duchies and coastal towns, the crown itself. He claims it through a lineage debate so convoluted it would make your family's group chat look tame. But really, this is about power, legacy, and maybe a little revenge. France is still a mess. King Charles III is drifting between lucidity and glass body syndrome, and the Burgundians and Armagnacs are so busy fighting each other, they forget there's a whole English army parking on their lawn. Henry's army lands at Harfleur in August. The plan is quick conquest. Take the port, march inland, force a treaty. But Harfleur has other ideas. The siege drags for 5 weeks. You're knee-deep in muck, dysentery rips through the camp, and morale smells exactly like your unwashed socks. You hear soldiers call it the Bloody Flux, which sounds like a heavy metal band, but is, tragically, much worse. Eventually, Harfleur surrenders. Victory. Kind of. Half the army is too sick to walk, let alone fight. Henry could go home, say, "Job well done," and be remembered as the guy who at least tried. Instead, he decides to march to Calais, across hostile territory, with half his troops dragging their intestines behind them like sad parade floats. It's bold, or stupid, or both. You march with him, boots soaked, stomach rumbling, and just enough arrogance to keep moving. French forces shadow you, confident that this tired English army is ripe for a crushing. Then the rain starts, and it doesn't stop. By October 25th, the feast of St. Crispin, you're near the village of Agincourt. The English are outnumbered. Estimates vary wildly, but it's safe to say you've got maybe 6,000 men facing as many as 25,000 French. And the field? A muddy corridor between two woods, trampled wheat, sucking mud. You could lose a shoe just thinking about it. The French arrive dressed like peacocks, glittering armor, banners fluttering, horses champing at the bit. They're confident. They think they've already won. Henry, on the other hand, walks the lines the night before, helmet under his arm, greeting his soldiers like old friends. You hear him laugh. It's unsettling. Then comes morning. The field is a quagmire. The French are so tightly packed they can barely move. And before they even finish forming ranks, the English archers, those glorious mud-covered goblins of war, unleash hell. Thousands of arrows arc through the sky like deadly rain. Longbows shoot faster than you can blink. Horses scream. Men fall. The French advance anyway. Slowly, slipping, shields raised like noble turtles in a blender. By the time they reach your lines, they're exhausted and jammed together like sardines in plate mail. That's when the English knights counter, not galloping, trudging through the mud like angry farmers, but still deadly. The fighting is brutal, intimate. Daggers between helmet gaps, maces cracking ribs. At one point, Henry himself is nearly killed. A French knight strikes him with a poleaxe, cracking part of his crown. And then, chaos. French reinforcements attack the English baggage train. Henry panics, orders the execution of thousands of French prisoners. Yes, prisoners. It's one of the darkest moments of the campaign. Historians still argue whether this was a strategic necessity or a war crime. Either way, it leaves a stain on what was otherwise a dazzling military feat. By the end of the day, the battlefield is quiet. Over 6,000 French lie dead, many of them nobles, knights, and commanders. The English lose maybe a few hundred. You wander through the aftermath, stunned. Mud slick with blood, broken armor glinting like shattered stars. Somewhere, someone finds a French noble's tooth stuck in a tree. You try not to think too hard about it. Agincourt is a legend now. Bards will sing, and Shakespeare will eventually make it poetry. We happy few. All that. But the real outcome? France is humiliated. The Burgundians pretend to be neutral, but are quietly pleased. The Armagnacs spiral. And Henry? He smells blood. Not metaphorically. He actually smells like someone who's been fighting in the rain all day. But also, metaphorically. You expect him to march on Paris. He doesn't. Not yet. Instead, he returns to England to fan the flames of his legend. Parades, pageants, portraits where his cheekbones could slice bread. But he's not done with France. Not even close. Over the next few years, Henry keeps pressing. More campaigns, more towns fall, and finally, in 1420, France cracks. The Treaty of Troyes is signed? Under duress? Yes, but still. It's massive. Henry marries Catherine of Valois, daughter of Charles VI. The treaty disinherits the French king's own son, the Dauphin Charles, and declares Henry the rightful heir to the French throne. You can barely believe it. The English king will inherit France. The war is, essentially, won. Quirky side note? The wedding of Henry and Catherine was deeply awkward. She barely spoke English. He barely smiled. Court whispers say she was terrified of him. But diplomacy doesn't require butterflies, just signatures and heirs. The future seems locked in. Henry will be king of both England and France. His son will rule a united realm. The war will end. Peace at last. Except fate has other plans, and they smell like smoke and gunpowder. But we'll get there. The candles burn low in the palace halls, and so does your optimism. It's 1422, and just when England starts preparing the royal crowns for a matching set, death has the nerve to interrupt. Henry V, your heroic arrow-dodging, mud-slaying, treaty-signing king, dies just like that. Dysentery again, or possibly a nasty infection from a battlefield wound. Either way, it's not the blaze of glory he probably pictured. No dramatic battlefield collapse, no final monologue, just sweat, silence, and an empty throne. You're in disbelief. So are the lords. So is France. He was 35, barely out of the let's conquer stuff phase. And now the grand Anglo-French empire he nearly secured rests in the very tiny, very soft hands of his baby son. Yes, the new king of England and France is 9 months old. What could go wrong? Across the channel, King Charles VI of France, the mad one who thought he was made of glass, also dies within weeks. You could almost hear the drum roll. That means technically, according to the Treaty of Troyes, the baby, Henry VI, now rules both kingdoms. Except, of course, no one in France outside of the pro-English court is going along with this. The Dauphin, Charles, son of the late French king, wasn't invited to the treaty party and wasn't asked to hand over his inheritance. Unsurprisingly, he's furious. And while the Treaty of Troyes says he's disinherited, the treaty was signed under duress, with a dying, mentally ill king and political pressure thick enough to spread on toast. So here we are, 2 kings, 1 crown, and France split right down the middle like a poorly baked loaf of bread. In Paris and the northern strongholds, the English and their powerful allies, the Burgundians, hold sway. In the south, especially along the Loire River, the Dauphin supporters gather, determined to crown their Charles as king. But it's not just kings and dukes fighting now. The war has morphed into something messier, a civil conflict with foreign backing, an identity crisis. France doesn't know if it's supposed to wear red or blue, or maybe just burn everything down and start over. And you? you follow the English army southward again. They push deep into the Loire Valley, hoping to stomp out the resistance before little Henry VI learns to walk, let alone rule. At first, things go well. The English take town after town. Siege engines creak into place. Battering rams pound stone like war drums. And yet, something feels shaky. The French aren't winning, but they're not breaking either. They scatter, regroup, and fight with a kind of desperate defiance that smells suspiciously like destiny. In the court of the Dauphin, Charles, meanwhile, there's anxiety wrapped in silk. His advisors bicker. His treasury is empty. His armies are thin. But still, he refuses to give up. And then into this swirl of mud, politics, and prophecy comes a vision. Literally, she walks into the war like a dream wrapped in chainmail. A peasant girl from the village of Domremy, illiterate, untrained, fiercely devout. Her name? Jeanne, Joan of Arc. She claims the saints have spoken to her. Saints, plural. Michael, Catherine, Margaret. Big names. They've told her to find the Dauphin, rally the French, and drive the English out. All of them. Completely. Oh, and she's a teenager. 14 or 15 tops. At first, nobody takes her seriously. She's a farm girl. She has no noble blood, no military experience, no fortune, no proper last name. She should be dismissed. But she keeps coming, keeps asking, keeps insisting. And slowly, somehow, people start to listen. She gets an audience with Charles. She tells him secrets that apparently only he could know. She speaks with such conviction, it makes seasoned generals blush. And Charles, backed into a corner with nothing left to lose, gives her command of an army. Sort of. More like a mascot with armor. But she doesn't act like one. She wears white, carries a banner instead of a sword, and she leads, not from the rear, from the front, right into the fire. The siege of Orléans is the test. The English have had the city under siege for months. Morale is cracking. Supplies are dwindling. The French defenders are tired, broken, nearly ready to surrender. And then Joan arrives. She doesn't strategize. She doesn't negotiate. She prays. She shouts. She charges. And the French follow her. It's not about tactics. It's energy, confidence, faith. They take one fort, then another. And within a week, the siege is broken. You're watching from the distance, stunned. The English, at your side, are running. And it's not because of some mighty battle plan. It's because a teenager in shining armor pointed at the walls and said, "God wills it." Quirky fact, Joan's banner, which she treated as more sacred than any weapon, reportedly depicted the hand of God holding the world with the words, Jesus Maria. When it ripped in battle, she had it mended before her wounds. Within weeks, she leads the Dauphin to Reims, through enemy territory, and sees him crowned as Charles VII. The cathedral bells ring. The people weep. France, divided for decades, suddenly feels whole. It's a miracle, or at least, it feels like one. Historians still argue whether Joan's military role was decisive or symbolic, but it's hard to deny this. She turned the tide. She made kings believe again, and she made the English afraid. The bells of Reims are still echoing when things start to unravel. You stand in the candlelit shadow of a cathedral, watching Joan of Arc's banner ripple in the wind like it's part of the divine. She's done it. Led Charles to his coronation, split the sky open with belief, and given France something it hasn't had in years, momentum. But the tide that rises also crashes, and for Joan, the waves are sharpening. It's early 1430, and though Charles VII wears the crown now, He's not exactly charging into war on horseback with Joan beside him. He's cautious, hesitant. Some say lazy, others say political. Either way you see it, he's letting the miracle cool. And Joan? She isn't. She keeps pushing. She begs Charles to march on Paris, strike while the fire's hot. But he delays, sends half-hearted raids, then signs a truce with the Duke of Burgundy, the very man who helped kill his family and sell out France. Joan doesn't trust it. Neither do you. She moves on her own, fewer troops, less support, but the same blazing intensity. By May of 1430, she's defending the town of Compiègne, surrounded by Burgundian forces. That's when it happens. She's captured. Is not by the English directly, but by Burgundian allies who see her as a prize, a symbol, a threat. You hear the rumors before the facts. They got the witch. The shepherd girl's in chains. God's favorite soldier lost her shield. She's sold to the English, literally, like livestock at a nobleman's auction. And from that moment, the war gains a second front. One fought not with swords, but with judges, parchments, and theology. Joan is hauled to Rouen, chained and dirty. She's 19, maybe 20, still defiant, still insisting her voices are real. The English want to break her, not just publicly, cosmically. They don't need a soldier. They need a heretic. The trial begins. It's long, torturous, sometimes literally. She's questioned for hours on end by a tribunal of clergy, scholars, and angry old men with way too much starch in their collars. They press her on everything. Her visions, her clothes, her politics, and her armor. Oh, they love talking about that. A woman in men's clothes. The horror. One inquisitor whispers, not subtly, that perhaps she's possessed. But Joan somehow resists. She answers with wit, grace, a kind of clarity that makes her judges nervous. At one point, when asked if she knows she's in God's grace, she replies, "If I am not, may God put me there. And if I am, may God keep me there." It's not a confession. It's not denial. It's perfect. The scribes pause. The court murmurs. You feel a chill. But truth doesn't always win. Eventually she breaks. They threaten torture, excommunication, eternal damnation. She signs a retraction, confused, exhausted, and then takes it back, says she never meant to recant, that her voices returned, that she was wrong to deny them. And that's enough. They sentence her to death. The morning of her execution is cool, eerily still. You're there in the crowd, not close, but close enough. You see her dressed in a simple robe, holding a wooden cross someone slipped to her in secret. She's barefoot, pale, but not afraid. She doesn't scream, doesn't curse. The pyre is lit. And as the flames rise around her, someone in the crowd, perhaps a soldier, perhaps a priest, no one knows for sure, shouts what many are already thinking. We are burning a saint. It's one of the strangest, most haunting moments of your life. A war born from crowns and land now has a martyr. A girl who couldn't read, couldn't write, couldn't even vote, has just redrawn the battlefield with her ashes. After Joan's death, something shifts. The English don't gain strength. They lose it. Their victories slow. Their alliances waver. The French, especially those in the south, harden like cooled steel. Joan's memory becomes a weapon. Her banner, now tattered and hidden, becomes legend. Soldiers sew symbols of her into their tunics. Her name is whispered before battles. Some swear she appears in dreams. Even Charles II, who let her die, leans on her memory. In 1450, years after her death, he orders an investigation into her trial. It takes years, but eventually, a new tribunal declares her innocent. too late for Joan, but not for France. Meanwhile, the Duke of Burgundy, always pragmatic, sees the writing on the wall. In 1435, he flips, abandons the English, and reconciles with Charles. It's like a knife in England's ribs. Paris soon follows. Retaken not with fanfare, but slow siege and quiet betrayal. The capital returns to French hands in 1436. You walk its streets again, older than you want to be, and it smells more like smoke than triumph. Historians still argue whether Joan of Arc was a genuine mystic, a savvy political figure, or a walking PR miracle. Maybe all three. Maybe none. But one thing's certain. After her, the English were never the same, and neither were you. You walk through Paris with a sense of déjà vu and ash in your lungs. The city is French again, technically, but the scars don't fade so easily. Buildings bear the ghost stains of fire. Alleyways remember boots that didn't speak the local tongue. And everywhere people whisper like the war's still listening. It's 1436. You're older now, more creak than spring in your step, but you know the rhythm of this war. When it softens, it's only to coil, so you stay alert. The English, meanwhile, are confused. This isn't the script they were reading from. Joan is gone, but instead of celebrating, their momentum has dissolved. Cities that once flew their banners are now quietly tearing them down. Burgundy, their strongest ally, has slipped through their fingers like melted wax. And the king, Henry VI, once a baby in royal diapers, is now technically an adult. But let's talk about Henry for a second. If Henry V was steel and fire, Henry VI is candlelight and parchment. He's gentle, kind, deeply pious, and absolutely not made for war. He spends more time in chapels than in council. He forgives too easily, cries often. You once saw him bless a goose with more ceremony than most lords get at their weddings. He wants peace, desperately. But the world he rules doesn't care what he wants. So, England governs through nobles, especially the powerful Duke of Suffolk and Cardinal Beaufort. And they, understandably, try to keep the illusion going. Keep Calais. Keep Normandy. Keep pretending this is still winnable, but it's not. The French, led by Charles VII, are now waging a smarter, quieter war. They avoid massive battles, focus on sieges, political marriages, bribes, sabotage. Every town retaken becomes a subtle domino. You don't notice it at first, until the line of English-held territory gets thinner than a monk's lunch. In 1449, the truce breaks. It wasn't strong to begin with, just a polite pause held together with wax seals and wishful thinking. But now Normandy, the jewel of English France, is under assault. The preacher calls it a trial. You call it a mistake. Then comes the pie. It's someone's birthday. A fire is lit, shaky and low. A pie appears, roundish, suspiciously purple, made with wild berries and borrowed flour. You eat it, you regret it. 4 of you vomit so violently, the oxen look concerned. One man sees visions. He starts shouting that God has chosen the preacher as his bride. The preacher is not flattered. Historians still debate whether more pioneers died from dysentery or determination. You suspect the answer is both. The terrain shifts. The air gets thinner. The grass turns yellow and mean. You ford a river that almost takes a wagon and a child. You don't sleep that night. You stare into the trees and think about names you haven't said in years. The prairie doesn't care about your past, only about how much you're willing to give up to keep moving. You meet a trapper, older than stone, with a beard like a crow's nest. He trades you jerky for sewing needles and warns you about snow in the pass. You laugh. It's still summer. He doesn't. And he's right. By September, the nights cut like knives. Frost creeps over your boots. The wagon canvas stiffens. Someone whispers Donner Pass, and no one speaks for a while. You keep moving, one hand on your knife, the other on the reins. The Thompsons fall behind. Their oxen limp. They wave you on with tight smiles. You look back once. That's enough. Then come the wolves. You don't hear a howl. You hear breathing. Heavy, intent. They take the weakest ox. It disappears into grass without a sound. Somehow, that silence is worse than a scream. The preacher says it's a test from the Lord. You say nothing. You sharpen your knife. By the time you spot smoke on the horizon, your supposed destination, your body is a collection of aches. You've lost 3 oxen, a third of your gear, and any romantic notions you ever held about the word journey. Your faith is battered. Your humor is dark. Your boots are ruined. But you're alive. Barely. You limp into the edge of the town, more of a suggestion than a place, and collapse onto a bench that groans beneath you. A man with kind eyes hands you bread and water. He doesn't ask where you came from. He doesn't need to. He can see it, smell it, hear it in your silence. The West doesn't welcome you. It tolerates you. And if you're lucky, if you're strong, if the land doesn't eat you first, maybe, you'll learn to do the same. The buzzing starts as a whisper, just a flicker in your ear while you lean over the stream, cupping water in blistered hands. It's faint at first, a curious note in nature's song, easy to ignore. Then comes the second, then the third. And suddenly, the air itself seems alive. A low vibrating fog around your face, your neck, your hands, wings, legs, mouth parts. They land, they bite, they feed. Mosquitoes. You slap. Again. It's a losing war. For every one you kill, 5 rise in its place. The others around you are flailing, swatting, cursing in 6 dialects. The preacher just mutters plague under his breath and ties a wet rag around his nose. This isn't a backyard annoyance. This is a siege. A full-body assault from the smallest, most relentless army nature ever bred. And here in the wet heartlands of 19th century America, it's everywhere. Stagnant water pools in ruts and hoofprints. The marshes steam with life. Drainage is a luxury no one can afford. You're neck deep in Eden's fevered graveyard. You try everything. Smear your skin with ash. Wrap your ankles in cloth soaked in vinegar. Burn sage, cow dung, swamp leaves. Anything anyone claims might help. A Choctaw man swears by pine pitch. A German settler suggests rubbing yourself with tobacco and lard. You try both. Nothing stops the bites. 2 days later, the fever comes. They don't call it malaria. Not yet. They call it the ague, or marsh fever, or bad air sickness. You don't care what it's called. You just want it to leave. It starts with the heat, a fire behind your eyes. Then the chills, bone deep, rattling, cruel. Your joints ache like someone poured rust inside them. You sweat, then shiver, then sweat again. Your spine locks. You vomit bile onto your boots and can't even sit up to wipe it off. There's no doctor, just a woman with calloused hands who crushes quinine into your water. It tastes like bitterness and tree bark. Probably was tree bark. You drink it anyway. It helps. A little, then it doesn't. The fever doesn't end. It just goes quiet. Waits. You lie there on a straw cot in a half-built shack, skin hot and slick, brain floating in its own heat. The boards above your head blur. A rat skitters across the floor and you're too tired to care. Someone reads a newspaper article out loud. Manifest destiny. The idea that America is meant to stretch from sea to shining sea, that this land is a divine inheritance, you don't respond. You're too busy trying not to drown in your own sweat. Besides, this fever doesn't give a damn about manifest destiny. It doesn't care about borders or gods or flags. It only cares that your blood is warm. And you're starting to wonder if the grand plan includes being eaten alive, one bite at a time. Outside, men work. They dig ditches, cut trees, stack stones. The railroad must go through. The town must rise. Progress doesn't wait. One man collapses near the ditch line. No one stops. There's no time. You watch through the warped window glass and feel small, disposable. You dream in flashes now. Wolves with yellow eyes, trains leaping from twisted rails, pie made from poison and regret. You wake with your heart pounding and no memory of your own name for several minutes. The preacher kneels beside you, whispers scripture with a cracked tongue. You're not sure it's for your benefit. You survive. Technically, but the fever takes something with it when it goes. Strength, clarity, trust in your own body. You walk with a limp now. Your hands shake when you grip tools. You flinch at the sound of wings. You try to work again, swing a hammer, haul stones. But the heat makes you dizzy and the buzzing has returned. You wrap your face in cloth, smear bacon grease on your arms. Someone said it keeps the bugs off. It doesn't, but you do it anyway. You meet a man at the edge of town, says he found a cure. Involves sassafras bark, pepper, and burying your hat for 3 days. You try it. Nothing changes. Your hat smells like death now. You meet a woman who's buried 3 sons, 2 from fever, 1 from a saw blade. She says she doesn't pray anymore, just watches the sky. Says it tells the truth better than people do. You believe her. You write a letter home. If you still have a home. You say the land is beautiful, that the sun sets like fire behind the pines, that you're strong, that the people are kind. You don't mention the buzzing, or the sweat, or the smell of quinine and rot. You don't say how your bones ache every time the sun rises. You end it with, all's well, because that's what people write, even when it's not. It's a warm evening, just after supper, the kind of evening that lies to you. Soft light, thick air, cows murmuring low across the fields, like they're half asleep and dreaming of greener grass. The sky is doing its best impression of mercy. A gold-stitched lullaby stretched over a land that never earned it. You've eaten something with beans in it, again, and you're sitting out on the porch, wondering if maybe tonight, just maybe, you'll get a few hours of sleep without being chewed by bugs, cooked by your own skin, or startled awake by some distant, godless noise that always seems to follow warm nights, like a shadow with teeth. Then you hear shouting. At first it's just a ripple. Fast words, sharp, cutting through the stillness like a crack in glass. Then boots. Dozens of them. A thump, thump, thump like a heartbeat growing angry. Then something stranger, cheering. Not wild, not desperate, patterned, rhythmic, familiar in a way that makes your stomach clench before your brain even catches up, like a harvest fair or a wedding. You step off the porch, puzzled. Others are already moving, as if summoned, as if they knew. Some carry chairs, some carry children. One woman has a picnic basket. A boy is eating an apple like he's headed to a game. A few men carry torches, though the sun hasn't even finished bleeding out across the hills. They don't carry them for light. They carry them because it's part of the show. Their faces are lit from below, flickering, ugly with anticipation. They're heading toward the courthouse square, or maybe the old tree, or maybe they're the same place now. You wonder aloud, another preacher's speech? A traveling show? Maybe a trial? Then you see the rope. It swings casually in the hands of a man you used to buy tobacco from. He's smiling. Not wide, not sinister, just like it's Tuesday, and this is what Tuesday means now. Your stomach drops. Heavy. Cold. Like stone in water. You don't need to ask what it's for. You already know. You've just walked, blind and casual, into one of 19th century America's ugliest open secrets. A lynching. Not a murder in the shadows. Not a crime of impulse. This is public. Ritualized. A performance. A gathering. An event. Something people bring their kids to and talk about afterward, like it was a parade or a fairground magic act. You see the man. Black, young, maybe 20. Maybe not even that. His shirt is torn, his hands are bound, his mouth is swollen, his left eye is closed. But he's alive, for the moment. Limping, breathing, upright. He doesn't scream. He doesn't beg. He doesn't speak. You ask someone what he did? What crime led to this? They shrug. He stole something. Another? Hurt a girl, I heard. A third? Don't matter. Ain't our job to ask. And that's that. No trial, no facts, no proof. The sentence was already carved into the tree before the man was even born. The crowd is smiling. Some are excited. Some just relieved it's not them. All are invested. They gather around the old oak, the one that's been there since the town was nothing but a crossroad and a promise. You always thought it was a beautiful tree. Now you can't look at it without seeing ghosts. Someone tosses the rope over a limb like they've done it a dozen times. Maybe they have. Maybe this is tradition now. Maybe this tree has a name, and maybe the name is Don't Look Too Long. A jug makes its way through the crowd. Children are lifted onto barrels and shoulders. Someone plays a harmonica. It's not joyful music, but it's not somber either. It's just background. You want to leave. You don't. Because leaving would mean pushing past people you know. Past your neighbor, your barber, the woman who once made you a pie when your wife died. And suddenly you realize, truly, sickeningly realize, how easily a good town can rot. How quickly stillness becomes complicity. How silence feels like safety, but isn't. The man looks up, not at the crowd, at the sky, like maybe the stars might come early tonight, like maybe the sky will take him before the rope does. You hope, with a sick, selfish ache, that he goes fast. Historians will argue about how many this happened to, how often, how widespread. The records will be scattered, burned, misfiled, erased. But the truth won't die. It lives in photographs, in postcards, in the polite omissions of county history books. Some towns held lynchings on market days. Some printed programs. You try not to remember what comes next, but you do. The sound the branch makes, not like wood breaking, but like wood remembering, the way the body moves and then doesn't. The silence, total, complete, as if the land itself is holding its breath. The swing of the rope, the creak, the absolute finality of it all. And then someone says, "Let's eat." Just like that, the world resets. Conversation resumes. Children whine about being tired. The crowd disperses like it's the end of a sermon. The town exhales. The air goes back to pretending nothing happened. But the rope still swings, lazy in the breeze. A thread left hanging in case someone else forgets their place. The next morning, the tree is clean. But not really. The wood remembers. The dirt remembers. You do too. You hear later the man may have been innocent, or mistaken for someone else, or just convenient. The story gets slippery, details blur, but the tree still stands, and so does the silence. The preacher gives a sermon that Sunday. Something about obedience, about divine justice, about order. He never mentions the rope, but during the benediction, his eyes flick to the window. Just once. A boy tells a joke about it at the saloon. Something cruel, something vivid. Someone laughs too hard. Someone else doesn't laugh at all. No one says stop. That night you try to sleep, but the rope creaks. Even when the wind is still. Even when you shut every window and stuff cloth in your ears, it creaks. And it will keep creaking until someone finally cuts it down and buries it properly with a name. You wake up to the stench of sewage, not a suggestion, not something you could call musty to be polite. No, this is aggressive, violent, the kind of smell that grabs the back of your throat and squeezes until your eyes water. It smells like rot, like sickness, like everything the body can't hold in. And it's coming from everywhere. You gag, you sit up, and then you remember, this is your life now. A third-floor room in a city that's growing too fast to bother with plumbing. A tenement that leans like it's exhausted by its own weight. The wallpaper peels and strips. The windows sweat. You live among 16 other souls on this floor alone, though the number changes depending on the week or the weather. Your room is small. Too small for 6 people, which is exactly how many it holds. You share space with 2 dock workers, a cigar roller, a wheezing man who lost his boots 2 jobs ago, and a baby who wails like it owns the building. No one knows who the mother is anymore. She might have moved. She might have died. The baby stayed. Your mattress is straw packed into a burlap sack and soaked with more nights than you can count. It smells like old cabbage, burnt tobacco, and feet, and somehow also like damp bread. You sleep in your clothes. You have no choice. They're your blanket, your armor, and your shame all in one. You hear scratching 2 rooms over. Not mice, nails, fingers, someone picking at scabs, someone chasing lice. It doesn't matter. You've learned not to care about the details. There's a bucket in the hallway, not for water. The other thing, and it's full. Someone missed. You step around the stain on the floorboards, holding your breath like it's the last clean thing in the world. The boards are warped from past spills. One creaks ominously beneath your heel. You don't dare check what's soaked into it. Outside, it doesn't get better. It just gets louder. The streets are a theater of filth. Horses leave steaming piles in their wake. So do humans. When the alleys are dark enough, chamber pots are emptied from windows with no warning. You learn fast. Walk in the middle of the street, mouth closed, eyes alert. Never trust a shutter creaking open. There's a street sweeper. Just one man, one broom, one impossible task. He shuffles along, humming a hymn like it'll save him. His boots slosh. The air tastes like coal smoke, spoiled meat, and spoiled dreams. Welcome to the city. You head to work, if you can call it that. Today, it's a button factory. Yesterday, it was packing matches. Tomorrow, it might be hauling bricks for a man who forgets your name every time you show up. You're not a worker here. You're replacement parts. The factory is brick outside, soot inside. You squeeze into a narrow aisle between children and mothers and men who've stopped blinking. The windows are nailed shut. There's light, but no air, just heat. The smell of sweat and steam and singed fingers. You light a stub of candle and hope the wax doesn't drip into the machine. You work. You don't speak. You don't cough too loud. You bleed, just a little, from a pinprick, and wonder if it'll turn into infection. If it does, you're already dead. At noon, there's a break. 5 minutes. You sit on the floor. Someone passes you a crust. Someone else passes a bottle. It's vinegar water. It tastes like regret. You drink it anyway. Back in the tenement, someone's died. Again. You hear the landlady mutter something about consumption and bad habits. The body is dragged down the stairs wrapped in a curtain. The room is swept. The bed is taken. By supper, a new man is lying there, breathing just as heavily as the last one did. You eat on the stoop. A slab of bread, a scrap of cheese, a hunger that never really leaves. A rat scurries past. You don't flinch. It's lived here longer than you have, and it's earned the right to walk wherever it pleases. A fight breaks out 2 floors up. Something crashes. A child screams, then silence. Someone plays a fiddle next door. The tune is almost beautiful. You sit there and wonder what it would feel like to breathe deep without coughing, to drink water that doesn't fight back, to lie in a bed that doesn't crunch when you move. Historians still debate how people lived like this. Some call it resilience. Others call it necessity. But they're writing from clean rooms with clean hands. They don't know what it's like to listen for death in a hallway, or to bargain with a coin and a piece of stale bread. There are public baths. You try one. The water is gray, thick with skin and old secrets. You pay a man for soap. He hands you a sliver someone else already used. You scrub fast. You leave faster. And yet, you still find something to hold on to. The light at dusk, golden and careless, catching on the edge of a window pane. The sudden warmth of someone sharing a story beside the stove. The brief accidental kindness of a stranger. You learn to hoard those things like treasure, because they're the only wealth you'll ever know. You lie down for the night. The baby starts crying. Someone else starts coughing. And then above you, a soft splash. A bucket tipped again. You pull your coat over your head, close your eyes, and pretend the city doesn't exist. Just until morning. You don't volunteer. No one really does. But your name gets drawn anyway, scratched onto a list by a clerk who doesn't look up, doesn't care, just points and says, "Next." It's 1863. The war isn't a story anymore. It's a presence, a storm, a bleeding thing that marches across maps and into your life whether you want it or not. The Union is calling. Or maybe the Confederacy, depending on which side of the border you woke up on. Doesn't matter. Both are hungry. Both wear the word cause like armor. Both say it's about freedom, honor, statehood, dignity, sovereignty, vengeance, or maybe just land. All you feel is dread. You pack a satchel with what little you have. A cracked comb, a torn Bible, a letter you never sent. Then you board the wagon that takes you to camp. Camp is not what you imagined. It's mud. Endless mud. Tents sagging like they've lost the will to stand. Smoke curls from scattered fires, but it's thin, mostly for show. The uniforms barely fit. Some men wear coats too small, some none at all. Boots are patched with twine. A few go barefoot. You ask about training. They hand you a bayonet and say, "Try not to stab yourself. Your rifle is older than you. The flint is cracked. The wood smells like mildew and regret." There's a drill sergeant with no patience and half a voice. He yells at everything. Trees, clouds, the wind. Mostly at you. You march in circles. You load without powder. You fire blanks into nowhere. You're being prepared to die, not to fight. Nights are worse. You lie on damp canvas and listen to strangers dream. Men talk in their sleep, mutter names, whisper prayers. One man cries. He doesn't stop until morning. No one asks why. You wouldn't want to explain either. The next day you move. Wagons creak. Cannons roll. Maps are studied by officers with hollow eyes, hands trembling just enough to betray their confidence. You march into fog, into heat, into places no one bothered to name on the map, and then, without warning, it begins. Crack. The first gunshot sounds like God cracking his knuckles. Then more. Fast, overlapping, thunder without rain. You don't know where it's coming from, or where to run. You drop low, you fire, you miss. Everyone misses. Then someone doesn't. The boy next to you is hit. His knees fold. His mouth opens. No sound comes out. You grab him. Instinct. And your hands come away red. So much red. You didn't know there could be this much. You keep moving. Because stopping is death. Smoke rolls in. Your ears ring. You fire again. You bayonet shadows. You stumble through noise and dirt and screaming. Later, you see blood on your sleeves and don't know whose it is. You survive for now. Afterward, they call it a victory. You can't tell. The camp becomes a hospital, if that's the right word. It's a field with tarps and saws. The surgeons move like executioners. They work fast. No time for names. Bones pile up. Buckets overflow. There's more screaming here than in battle. You drink coffee. It's black as tar. It burns. It doesn't help. The food is worse than prison. Salt pork like leather. Hardtack that shatters teeth. Water thick with things that don't belong. You crack a molar on a biscuit and keep chewing anyway. Hunger doesn't care about enamel. Disease moves faster than bullets. Some die without ever lifting a rifle. Dysentery, typhoid, fever. Names no one bothers to spell right on the death rolls. The worst part? No gunfire, just leaking, moaning, fading. You write home. You don't say the truth. You say, I'm fine. Because what else can you say? The next fight comes before your boots dry. You're told this one will turn the tide. You no longer ask which direction. You just march. You load. You wait for the sky to fall. Men fall in rows, like they were planted wrong. An officer forgets the signal, gets shot by his own line. A cannon misfires and takes 3 with it. You don't remember drawing your weapon, but it's in your hand, warm. You dream that night of your old boarding house, the lice, the noise, the crying baby. You miss it. It was hell, but it had walls. One night, you stand watch. The moon turns rifles into silver. You see movement near the trees. You lift your gun. It's a deer. It stares at you, then vanishes into brush. You let it go. You envy it. The war drags on. Your beard thickens. Your boots unravel. Your hands tremble when you eat, but not when you aim. You start writing on anything you can find. Scraps, bark, corners of paper. Names, jokes, fragments of songs. You write recipes you haven't tasted in years. You're afraid of forgetting what butter smells like. You hear talk of peace. No one believes it. You've seen too much to believe in endings. Only pauses. You come back from the war with your limbs intact. That makes you lucky. But luck has a short shelf life. Because peace doesn't mean rest. It means work. And in the rust-streaked aftermath of post-war America, work means factories. Endless corridors of brick and grime, coughing black smoke into skies already poisoned with ambition. Inside, machines that don't care if you're tired or sore or alive. Only that you're there. You pass through the gates before sunrise, boots muddy, stomach hollow. The foreman doesn't ask your name, doesn't look you in the eye. Just jerks a thumb toward the floor and says, "Start now." The walls sweat. The floors shine with something that isn't water. The air tastes like metal filings and ash and something faintly on fire. A scent that never leaves your throat. This is industry. This is progress. And this is how it chews the meat off your bones. You're stationed beside a leather punch, a machine designed to move faster than thought and hit harder than memory. It hisses, breathes, slams every 2 seconds. On the dot, like a beast with lungs made of pistons, they tell you don't blink, don't slow down, don't trust the rhythm, because rhythm is what lulls you, and rhythm is what it kills. You nod, then you blink. Across the aisle, a boy screams. His hand disappears into the machine. There's a spatter. Red, sudden, final. The machine doesn't pause, doesn't acknowledge, just keeps feeding. Hiss, slam, hiss, slam. Someone drags him out. Another body steps in. No names, no records, just replacement parts. You work 14 hours that first day. There are no breaks, only slows. Seconds where you chew a crust of bread between cycles, sip warm water that smells like rust, and pray your hands don't slip. Conversation is discouraged. Smiling is considered a waste of energy. A girl cracks a joke. They send her to coal sorting. Her lungs haven't stopped coughing since. The noise is constant, not loud, deep. A grinding, churning rattle that sinks into your marrow. You come home with ears ringing and a headache like iron nails tapping against your skull in rhythm. You try to sleep. You dream in gears. Day 2 is worse. You start to see it. The details you missed before. Skin gone gray under the dust. Eyes that don't blink anymore. A man limps with a hip that never healed. A girl's hair is shorter every week, cropped to avoid the pull of the machines. One woman is missing an eyebrow. No one asks. You don't want to know. There are no safety guards, no panic levers, no goggles or gloves or second chances. If your sleeve catches, you're swallowed. If your braid swings too close, you're scalped. A boy once sneezed mid-stroke, lost 3 fingers. They buried them in the yard like trash. Historians still argue how many were maimed, lost, erased. But most records were never written. The factory doesn't track corpses. It counts output, and you're part of the math. Summer comes. The heat thickens. There's no airflow, no shade. The air wraps around your neck like wet cloth. You sweat before you move. The stench of oil and skin fills your nostrils until you taste it. People collapse. One girl drops near the press, face first. They carry her out. She's back the next morning, paler, quieter. You consider quitting? But quitting means no paycheck, no room, no food, no life. So you stay, you adapt, you tighten, you harden, your hands blister, then callous, then ache. Eventually, they go numb. Somewhere around midday. You keep working. You stop noticing. You meet a man who's been here 12 years. He's 35, but looks older than stone. His left hand hangs useless, curled like a claw. Crushed under a press 5 years ago. He says, "Learn to use your feet, just in case." You laugh. He doesn't. Then comes the fire. Small spark, loose thread, wrong breeze, and suddenly the corner is flames. You hear someone scream. You smell hair burning. The back door is jammed. A woman tries the window, slips, falls 2 stories, doesn't get back up. You make it out. The firemen arrive when the smoke's already died. 3 days later, the factory reopens. Nothing changes. The smell follows you home now, not just on your clothes, but in your pores. A mixture of ash, grease, and hopelessness. You wash, but it lingers. People step aside on the street. You stop noticing. You eat less. You sleep less. You think less. The machines are louder now. Or maybe your ears are just fading. Doesn't matter. You wake in the night whispering numbers, counts, steps, revolutions. You recite them in your sleep. The factory has colonized your mind. Somewhere in your skull, A gear is turning. You try to remember what your hands felt like before this. Soft, capable, yours. But now, they just feel like tools, and even tools break. You come back from the war with your limbs intact. That's more than most. But luck, it turns out, has a short shelf life. Peace doesn't mean rest. It means vacancy. It means replacement. It means the country no longer needs men to charge across fields and bleed for territory. It needs them to clock in, grind down, and feed the machine. You need food, a bed, maybe something like a future. So you follow the smoke to the cities, to the steel bones of the new America. You follow the sound of hammering, clanging, shouting. You follow the promise, and you find the factory, a building with no soul, just brick, soot, and air that smells like burned coins and regret. The front gate swallows you whole. There's no welcome, no forms, no handshake. The foreman, stained shirt, sunken eyes, doesn't ask your name, just jerks his thumb to the back wall and says, "Start there. That's your station. That's your sentence." Inside, the air is thick, greasy. The walls drip like they're sweating blood. The floor has been worn down to a permanent ache, slick with oil and something darker, something permanent, something human. The air itself tastes like teeth, sharp, metallic, and old. This is industry. This is the future. And this is how it devours you. You're put on a leather punch. Simple task, they say. Feed the sheet, hit the pedal, move the piece. Repeat. But the machine doesn't care about your nerves, your attention span, or the sleep you didn't get last night. It slams down every 2 seconds, without pause, without forgiveness. Hiss, slam, hiss, slam. The foreman tells you, don't drift, don't blink, don't get too close. Comfort, he says, is how people disappear. You nod, you blink, and across the line, a boy, can't be more than 16, screams. There's a blur, a noise that doesn't sound human. Then he's on the ground, staring at the space where his hand used to be. Blood sprays and pulses. The machine doesn't stop, doesn't notice. It just keeps working. A man drags the boy away. Another steps in, no questions, no pause. Just the rhythm, just the noise. 14 hours that first day. You eat while you work, chew with your mouth closed to keep the grit out. There's no lunch, no clock, just the horn at the end of the shift, like a mercy killing. Talk is discouraged. Smiling is suspicious. A girl makes a joke, a quiet one, something about the foreman's hat. They send her to coal sorting. She comes back a week later with black under her fingernails and a 1,000-yard stare. No one jokes after that. You come home sore in places you didn't know existed. You lie down on a mattress that used to belong to someone who didn't make it, and your ears keep buzzing. The factory doesn't stop just because you've left it. It hums in your jaw. It echoes in your spine. You dream in gears, in fire, in teeth made of steel. The second day, you start noticing what the first day hid. The broken people, men whose backs are bent like question marks, fingers fused together, shoulders that twitch without warning. Women with their hair hacked short, cheaper than a funeral when the rollers take a strand and rip it out by the root. One woman works with her left hand only. You wonder why. Then you see the stump where her right used to be. There are no guards, no safeties, no signs that say warning, only whispers, rumors, old bloodstains in the corner that no one talks about. Don't wear loose sleeves. Tie your boots tight. Never sneeze. They buried 3 fingers last week in a tin can out back. No names, just parts. The summer heat crawls in through every crack. The air thickens until it's more steam than breath. No fans, no brakes, no relief. Someone faints near the gears. They don't stop the line, just drag her away and hose the spot. She's back the next day, gray-faced, silent. You think about leaving, just walking away. Let the city have this nightmare. But the math is simple. No job means no money. No money means no rent. No rent means the street. And the street doesn't forgive. So you stay. You get faster. Your body adapts. Your fingers split. Harden. Stop bleeding. They don't feel like yours anymore. Just tools. Extensions of the machine. You meet a man named Clyde. He's worked here 12 years. He's 36. Looks 70. One hand doesn't open all the way. Crushed by a press. The skin is like leather. He tells you, learn to use your feet, just in case. You laugh. He doesn't. Then comes the fire. A belt snaps, sparks, oil catches. Flame rolls up the wall like it's been waiting. Smoke curls low, dense, hot enough to blind. People shout, scramble. The door sticks. A woman jumps from the second floor. You hear her bones break before you see her land. You run. You live. The factory reopens in 3 days. They patch the wall. Hire replacements. The machine never skips a beat. You stop smelling like yourself. You start smelling like the place. Oil, grease, burned metal, and rust. You carry it home in your hair, your skin, your blood. You cough black for no reason. You wake with your hands still twitching. You start forgetting things. Faces. Names. Your reflection. You catch yourself in a pane of glass and don't recognize the shape you see. You used to sing. You used to laugh. Now you count beats. Punch. Feed. Turn. Stack. Your mouth tastes like metal. Your hands no longer belong to you. One night, you stare at them in the candlelight. They're cracked, wrapped in cloth, calloused beyond feeling. You try to remember what they used to look like, what they used to do. You can't. The factory isn't just a place anymore. It's a rhythm, a religion, a wound, and you're inside it now, forever caught in its teeth. You hear it before you believe it. Gold. The word hisses through saloons and boarding houses, like wind through dry grass. Low, urgent, electric. Found out west, they say, in the rivers, in the dirt. Little yellow stones that mean freedom, fortune, a life where no one calls you boy or laborer again. You don't ask questions. You pack. So does everyone else. This time, the journey west moves faster. The rails have stretched their iron fingers farther. Coaches rattle down half-built roads. Some ride wagons, some mules. Some just walk. If it heads west, it's full. You cram onto a stagecoach with 7 other strangers, all already arguing over claims they haven't seen yet. You arrive in California to madness. It's not a town. Just a sprawl of tents, timber, shouting, and smoke. A fever dream of mud, sweat, and ambition. Merchants line the street, barking about miracle pans, guaranteed maps, and dust-proof boots. One man sells gold magnet oil for $10 a bottle. You ask what's in it. Secrets, he grins. It smells like vinegar and lies. You buy a pan anyway. You find a spot by the creek, and you start digging. At first, the land offers nothing. Cold water, muddy rocks. Your fingers prune and bleed. Your spine seizes. You dig until your nails go black, and your skin turns the color of rust. But just often enough, just enough to keep you there. You see it. A fleck, a shimmer, the whisper of maybe. It's never enough. Your neighbors fare worse. One man screams that he's rich. You run to him, but he's already gone. Robbed, drowned, doesn't matter. His tent is stripped by sundown. Another swears he struck a vein. then collapses the next day shaking with fever. No one touches his claim, not out of respect, out of fear. The camps at night are lawless. Saloons built from canvas and whiskey sway with songs, fights, and slurred dreams. Men gamble boots, teeth, lives. Knives flash between laughs. Someone is always drunk. Someone is always armed. A man is shot over a stolen mule. Another over a woman. A third just for the way he walked. You sleep with your pickaxe under your bedroll. If you sleep. A preacher shows up one evening, sets up a canvas tabernacle, preaches fire and gold and salvation. He's robbed within the week, keeps preaching anyway. He draws a crowd. Hope always does. You try to eat healthy. You fail. Your diet becomes salt pork, hardtack, beans burned in the same tin you shave with. You boil your water, then your beans, then your hands. Still, you get dysentery. You lose weight, teeth, interest in humanity. The days blur. The river changes color. The hope thins out. Historians still argue how many died here. From cholera, from fighting, from the cold, from their own dreams. The only thing that filled up faster than saloons were graveyards. The cruelest joke? Most never found gold. You didn't. But someone got rich. The merchant selling pans, the man selling boots, the ferry operator charging a day's wages to cross a creek. The ones who stayed dry made the money. There's a man in town who's never held a pickaxe. Owns 3 buildings now. People nod when he walks past. You trade your pan for a bowl of stew. Then you go back to the river. Again. Your hands shake. Your boots leak. Your tent droops like it's tired of you. One night, a bear claws through a neighbor's sight. The next, it's men with guns and twitchy fingers. You're not sure which was worse. You meet a woman who sells cactus pies for $1 a slice. They taste like dirt and hope. You buy 2. You thank her like she saved your life. One morning, you see a man standing in the water. Just standing, not panning, not moving, staring at nothing. He stays there for hours. No one asks if he's all right. You understand. Eventually, you leave. With less than you came with, you limp back into town, pass a boy selling genuine gold rocks for $0.10 apiece. Fool's gold, you can tell. Painted, maybe. You buy one anyway, because now you understand. The gold rush was never about gold. It was about belief, about the dream, about the lie that maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one who makes it. And that kind of hope? It bankrupts fast. Faster than a mine. Faster than a promise. Faster than you. You wake up wheezing. It starts in your chest. Slow, thick and sticky, like someone filled your lungs with hot syrup and dared you to breathe through it. You cough once, twice, and the pain lights up behind your ribs like fire under wet wood. You reach for the bottle. It's amber glass chipped at the mouth, half full of something the color of brewed tobacco and the consistency of melted glue. No label, just a faint vinegar smell and a promise you're supposed to believe. You drink it. It tastes like turpentine stirred with penny nails and haunted dreams. But that's medicine now. It came from a man in town with a stovepipe hat and a wagon full of promises. He says he studied with European doctors, which might be true if European means Belgium and doctors means bartenders with strong opinions. He sells cure-alls for everything: fever, gout, female sorrow, unwanted thoughts. You ask what's in the bottle. He winks and says, mostly herbs and a little opium. You stop asking. In 19th century America, medicine is more performance than science. Doctors are often self-declared. Pharmacists are improvisers. And if it smells bad, burns going down, or makes you sweat through your boots, it's considered effective. So you keep drinking the syrup and rubbing on the chest salve that smells like a pine forest soaked in pig fat. You're not sure what's in it. Bear grease? Camphor? Lard infused with spite? Doesn't matter, you're desperate. You pass a sign nailed to a fence? Dr. Sylvester's miracle elixir cures illness, weakness, and poor moral hygiene. You almost laugh. Almost. Another bottle promises to fix spiritual fatigue and male inadequacy. You remember the widow who drank the whole thing in one sitting. They buried her in silence. The undertaker said, "At least she went peacefully." That was a lie. Historians still argue how many people were cured versus poisoned by these frontier remedies. The ingredients ranged from the dangerous to the deranged. Mercury, cocaine, arsenic, laudanum. One cough syrup was 40% alcohol, marketed for children. You visit a town doctor for the ache in your side. He stares at it, mutters about humors, and pokes you with something that might have once been a knitting needle. He calls it phantom congestion and recommends leeches. You decline. He offers to slap on a tobacco poultice instead. You decline harder. You walk home with the poultice anyway, just in case. On the way, you pass a woman selling witch oil in tiny vials, made from garlic, goose fat, and owl feather steep. She claims it works on everything except loneliness. That, she says, requires whiskey. You believe her. You hear about a new wonder tonic from Europe. Chlorodyne. Stops pain instantly. They say it's divine. Turns out it's a cocktail of opium, cannabis, and chloroform. One man said it let him speak to angels. Another forgot how to walk for a week. You try it once. You forget 3 days. Wake up in a barn. You don't own a barn, so you go back to what you know. Warm water, soft bread, sweat it out, sleep when it comes, and hope the fever breaks before your brain boils like an egg. Your neighbor chops off a fingertip splitting wood. He dips it in vinegar and ties it with bootstring. Says he read it in a pamphlet called The Rustic Healer. His hand turns gray. He says it's healing. You say nothing, because in this world, there are no clinical trials, just legends and local superstition. Your aunt drank turpentine for a sore throat. Your uncle swallowed hot ash for stomach cramps. A preacher once claimed he cured tuberculosis with raw onion and Psalm 91. You try not to laugh, mostly because your ribs still hurt. You keep a list of what you've taken this month. 3 bottles of Professor Elwood's Vital Breath, a tin of powdered rhubarb and lye, a spoonful of cod liver oil laced with molasses and shame, a shot of honey mixed with kerosene and boiled nettle, 1 secret remedy involving mustard, 2 eggs, and a prayer in German. You're still breathing. Technically. The strange part? You feel better. Not cured exactly, just stubbornly alive. Maybe it's the potions. Maybe it's placebo. Maybe your body is just too tired to die properly. Because the real medicine isn't in the bottle. It's in time. In sleep. In not taking too much of anything too fast. And maybe a bit of luck. You go to bed with a flannel soaked in eucalyptus tied around your throat and a brick warmed in last night's coals under your feet. You stare at the ceiling, half expecting to hear your heart mutter in protest. Instead, you dream of clean hospitals, of white coats, of sterile needles and soft beeping sounds, and something called antibiotics. But that world doesn't exist. Not yet. Tonight, there's only snake oil, ghost doctors, and whatever's left in the bottom of the bottle. You take another sip and pray it doesn't kill you before it helps. If you're a woman in 19th century America, you don't get sick days. You don't get quiet. You don't get rest. and you sure as hell don't get credit. You rise before the sun, barefoot on splintered floors, stirring pots and small lives before your own eyes have fully opened. You feed mouths that can't yet say thank you. You sweep a dirt floor that laughs at your effort. You scrub shirts until your knuckles crack and bleed, and your hands age faster than the rest of you. And if you're lucky, you'll live long enough to die in your bed instead of on the kitchen floor or in the bloody cradle of childbirth. You're 26 with 4 children and another pressing against your ribs. You haven't stopped aching in 6 years. Your ankles swell. Your gums bleed. Your hair falls out in the brush like leaves in a dying season. The pounding in your skull might be a fever, or rage, or just the sound of your life slipping one chore at a time into someone else's story. You see the doctor once, when you can afford it. He says you're fine, but fine in this world just means not actively dying. You give birth at home because hospitals are for the wealthy or the already dead. The midwife shows up with boiled scissors, a bucket of rags, and a hymn stuck in her throat. There's no anesthesia, just a stick between your teeth and pain that swallows the daylight. You scream until your voice breaks. No one flinches, because this is what women do. You tear in places no one mentions. You bleed in waves. You pass out twice. The baby lives. You live. This time. Historians still argue the numbers, but everyone agrees. Giving birth in the 1800s was a game of Russian roulette, with more blood. 1 in 8, 1 in 10. Sometimes better, sometimes worse. Depends on the season, the air, the midwife, the luck. Infection, fever, blood loss. Childbirth didn't just take life. It burned it at both ends. You're given no time to heal. Within days, you're back at the stove, lifting toddlers, boiling diapers in a cauldron that smells like ammonia and failure. You hobble, you leak, you cry when no one's looking. You wear a smile like armor, thin, cracked, barely holding. Your husband means well mostly. He works, he tries, but he doesn't understand why burnt bread sends you into sobs, or why some mornings you stare out the window like you're listening for a voice that doesn't speak English. He pats your shoulder, says you're strong. Strong is the mask, not the truth. You see other women at the well. No one complains, not aloud, but glances are shared. One woman walks with a limp she didn't have last spring. Another lost her 3rd baby and hasn't spoken since. Someone jokes about drowning in the wash basin. No one laughs. You take small comforts where you can. A hot mug of sassafras tea, a clean breeze, the rare golden hour when no one is crying and the house almost feels still. A neighbor gives you a recipe for nerve tonic, lemon peel, gin, and 2 fingers of silence. You drink it slowly. There are bottles now made just for women. Mother's Friend, Ladies Restorative, Dr. Willoughby's Womb Wine. Most are 60 proof. Some are laced with morphine. All come in pretty bottles with fancy fonts and promises they'll make you whole again. You try one. You sleep for 14 hours. When you wake, you cry. Not from sadness, from relief, from absence. Because for once your body didn't feel like a battlefield. Then your period doesn't come. Again. You start counting days, weeks. Dread pools in your gut like ink in water. Not again. Not now. But you know better than to beg. There's no pause button on this life. Only more laundry. More noise. More mouths. And a body that feels like it belongs to everyone but you. You start hiding coins. Under floorboards. Inside old biscuit tins. A few pennies at a time. You don't know what for. A doctor. A train ticket. A night in a town where no one knows your name and the beds smell like soap instead of milk and despair, you keep going. Because you have to. Because nobody else will do it for you. You sew, you clean, you wipe noses, you rock the baby until your arms go numb and your mind forgets what stillness feels like. You pray in the kitchen, you bleed in silence, you carry the world in your womb and get no monument for it. At night, when the house is quiet and your bones scream beneath the quilt, you whisper the names of the women you've known who didn't survive, who bled out, burned out, broke. You speak their names like a spell, because if you don't remember them, who will? And because you're afraid one day, someone will have to whisper yours. It starts with a theft, small, almost forgettable. A hammer, a coil of wire, your last clean shirt, taken from the shed you rent behind the boarding house. You don't hear the thief. You just find the door swinging and the floor bare. You report it. The landlord shrugs. Buy another. You can't. That was your only shirt with both sleeves intact. So you go to the town constable. He's asleep. In the jail. Feet on the desk. Hat over his eyes. Pistol half-cocked on the floor beside him. You come back the next day. This time, he's drunk. You know because he tries to arrest a fence post for looking at him sideways. On the third day, a deputy appears. He might be 12, might be 13. He's got thin wrists and an oversized badge pinned to a vest that doesn't quite fit. The revolver on his hip looks like it could tip him over if he turns too fast. He listens. Big eyes. Earnest nod. Says, "You should keep an eye out." That's law enforcement in 19th century America. You're on your own. There are sheriffs technically, elected, underpaid, and often just sober enough to cock a pistol without shooting their own foot. Some try, some steal. Some try while they steal. Most are good at one thing, knowing when to disappear. Their authority ends at the edge of town. Beyond that, the wind takes over, and the wind doesn't keep records. You hear gunshots one afternoon. Close, then shouting. You duck behind a barrel. No one else moves. The blacksmith just keeps hammering. The schoolteacher pulls her curtain shut. The saloon piano never misses a note. Just another dispute, settled frontier style, innit? With lead and pride and a short fuse. Over a cow, over a woman, over nothing. You watch two men standing over a body. The marshal shows up 20 minutes later. He squints, spits, scratches his beard and mutters, "You boys figure this out?" They nod. He leaves. By sundown, the corpse is gone. 3 days later, so is one of the men, found face down in the creek with his boots tied together and his mouth stuffed with playing cards. No trial, no jury, just justice. You go to the saloon one night, hoping for a drink that doesn't taste like kerosene or bad choices. You barely get 2 sips in before a bottle shatters, a chair flies, and someone yells, "Saturday's early this week." Pistols clear leather. A knife flashes. Someone hits the floor. Might be you. You stay down. Smart people always do. No one dies this time. The bartender docks drinks for damages. That's the settlement. The next morning, the marshal posts a sign on the saloon door. No shooting before sundown. Everyone nods. It's not a law, it's a courtesy. Historians still argue whether frontier justice maintained order or just institutionalized chaos with a better hat. In most towns, there's no real law, just memory. Reputation, retaliation. Eye for an eye. Bullet for insult, tree for suspicion. And sometimes, the law is the problem. You hear about a sheriff in Kansas who robs the same stagecoaches he's paid to protect. A deputy in Arizona who finds travelers by weight in chickens or bourbon. A judge in Texas who settles disputes with a coin toss. He owns both sides of the coin. Everyone knows. No one challenges him. You ask a man why folks still go to court. He shrugs. Better than rope. Then tips his hat and walks away. You pass a gallows one morning. Empty. For now. There's a man sitting beneath it, carving his initials into the post. You ask why? He says, might as well save them the trouble. You ask someone if the town has a jail. They point to a shed with no roof, 2 walls and a bucket. Only if it rains, they say. One night, your neighbor's shop is looted, front door kicked in, shelves stripped bare. He fires a warning shot at the sky, hits the weather vane. Next day, he's fined for disturbing the peace. You don't laugh. You just nod. Eventually, you stop reporting things. Everyone does. There's no point. Justice isn't blind out here. She's just tired. Half drunk, cross-eyed, and probably owes someone money. So you start carrying again. First a knife, then a pistol, then both. You sleep with the pistol by your bedroll. Practice drawing it under the table while pretending to butter bread. You get fast, then accurate, then quiet, too quiet. One night, someone grabs your coat in a dark alley. You don't hesitate. Steel flashes. There's a grunt, then silence. You don't check the face. You just keep walking. Next morning, there's a body in the street, face down, unnamed, forgotten. No one asks. No one blinks. The marshal walks by, lights a cigar, and says to no one in particular, well, must have had it coming. You drink your coffee, eat your toast, scrape burnt crust with the same knife you used last night. This is justice now. No gavel, no warrant, just instinct and aim. And in this town, that's good enough. It starts with a low hum, distant, eerie. You glance up from the porch, expecting clouds. Instead, the sky's gone wrong. Not dark, but sickly. A bruised green-gray like old copper bleeding into fog. The kind of sky that doesn't look angry. It looks patient. And patient is worse. The wind dies. The birds vanish. The horses go quiet. Ears twitching towards something only they can hear. The air presses down on your chest, like it's been waiting all day to suffocate you. Then the shift. The tornado doesn't scream in like the stories say. It slithers. You feel it before you hear it. The air turns electric. Your teeth buzz. Your skin prickles. And then the whisper, that impossible, monstrous whisper, starts to rise. Someone yells from the road, "Get low!" But it's too late to run, too early to scream. The sky is folding in on itself. You grab what you can, a wool blanket, a tin of lard, the hand of the person closest to you. You dive beneath the floorboards, chest heaving, breath shallow, ears tuned to the sounds of a world unraveling above your head. And then it hits, not like a gust, like a god, enraged and unsupervised. Wood snaps like ribs. Nails shriek from their boards. Glass becomes airborne and intimate. The ground doesn't shake. It jumps. You feel the floor lift beneath you. You feel the air leave your lungs. You're not under the house. You're under a war. The sound is not a roar. It's a groan. Low, massive. Like the sky itself is splitting open, bleeding thunder. And inside it, the grinding chaos of your life being torn limb from limb by wind and steel and things you can't see. And then, silence. Not peace, just absence. You crawl out slowly, coughing dust, blinking against the brightness that follows devastation. Your ears ring. Your mouth tastes like dirt and metal. Your fingers shake. Your house is gone. Not collapsed, scattered. The stove is missing. A wall lies 2 streets over, neatly folded like laundry. A chair has landed on the neighbor's outhouse and is somehow still upright. There's a fork embedded in a tree trunk 6 feet off the ground. You laugh once. A choked, broken thing. Then you sit in the dirt and cry. Welcome to the frontier, where nature doesn't negotiate, it decides. And you're the paper it scribbles on. But it's not just tornadoes. It's flash floods that come at midnight, silent and brutal, stealing horses and children, and hope in the same breath. It's droughts that stretch across 3 summers and kill crops by the acre while you dig cracked soil with bleeding fingers. It's hail the size of fists. It's lightning that jumps fences. It's fires that eat towns whole and keep chewing. And blizzards. And rattlesnakes. And wolves that follow you home just out of sight. Humming lullabies with teeth. Nature out here is not beauty. It's not something you paint. It's not a metaphor. It is hunger. It is memory. It is power. Absolute and unapologetic. You hear stories. A man frozen stiff in his outhouse, pants down, pipe still clenched in his teeth. A farmer praying in a field, bitten on the ankle by something he never saw. A preacher mauled trying to wrestle a bobcat off his mule. They buried him and the mule in the same hole. You try to rebuild, because that's what's expected. You hammer up new walls with old nails. You drape your only coat over the doorway like a curtain. You patch the shattered windows with wax paper and whispered prayers. You dig a trench to keep the rain from pooling around the base. The next storm floods it anyway. You lose a boot in the mud. Keep digging, barefoot, bleeding. You fix the fence. The wind takes it. You fix it again. The wind laughs and takes it again. A hawk swoops in and lifts your last chicken like it's personal. A coyote drags your stew pot into the woods. You see it the next day, still wearing your soup like a crown. You used to think God lived in the sky. Now you're not sure anything does. The animals don't fear you. Why should they? A skunk struts under your porch like a landlord. Raccoons break into your pantry with the confidence of bankers. A squirrel has turned your attic into a weapons cache. It chews through rope, linen, insulation. You set traps. They dance on them. You sleep light now. Always have one ear open, for rustling, for thunder, for that hum that means the sky is thinking about you again. You used to find comfort in the stars. Not anymore. Now they just remind you how small you are, how forgotten. In town, you meet a man with half his face singed, struck by lightning that snuck through his stovepipe while he napped. He woke up blind in one eye and smoking at the edges. He tells the story with a chuckle. You don't ask why. Maybe it's all he has left. You keep going, because what else is there? You build. You patch. You curse at the wind like it's an old rival. You learn how to sleep without expecting to wake in the same place. But you never trust a blue sky again. Because you know what lives behind it. You know what waits. You hear the fiddle first. Not loud. Not proud. Just there. Like it's always been there. A slow, aching sound curling through the night like wood smoke, wrapping around broken beams and sagging rooftops, slipping between cracks in the world. It's not a song. It's a memory. A lullaby written in the key of loss. You follow it. Not because you want to, but because you're too tired not to. After 100 disasters, 100 scraped knees and funerals with no coffins, you don't chase comfort anymore. You just drift toward it, like a leaf toward still water. The town is quiet. Too quiet. No gunshots, no glass shattering, no boots stomping or lanterns tipping. Just that fiddle, sweet, slow, and haunted. And your own footsteps, soft in the dust, like you're walking through the bones of something that used to be alive. It leads you to the church, or what's left of it. The roof is gone. One wall leans like it's trying to remember how to stand. But someone lit candles. Someone swept the dirt from between the pews. Someone cared enough to pretend this place still matters. Inside, there's no sermon, no pastor thundering from a pulpit, just quiet voices, firelight, the smell of stew cooking in a dented iron pot, and the faint perfume of pine and old grief. Someone hands you bread, still warm, a tin cup. No questions, no names, not tonight, because this isn't a service. It's a wake. For who? Everyone. A woman who slipped on black ice. A boy who wandered into the woods and never came out. A man who mouthed off to the wrong outlaw. A family that disappeared between coughs. A preacher who closed his Bible one night and didn't open it again. And maybe, just maybe, it's for you too. Not the breathing you. The one who came here thinking survival was about fists and fire and willpower alone. At the front of the room, there's a pine box, empty, on purpose. One by one, people approach and drop something in. A scarf, a broken watch, a ribbon, a dog-eared Bible, a tooth from someone's horse. Useless things, precious things, tokens of grief with no place else to go. You don't know what to offer, so you offer silence. You sit, you eat, you exhale, and for the first time in months, the breath goes all the way down. The music shifts, just a little. Not happy. Nothing here is happy. But soft, tired, a tune with a limp. Something you could almost dance to if your legs remembered how. Someone taps a rhythm on their tin. A child claps. A man hums off key. For a second, the whole building forgets how broken it is. Even the stars outside seem to lean in. Historians still argue about the role of funerals out here, whether they were sacred, social, or just an excuse to sit down and share food before the next person vanished. But in this moment, you know the truth. Funerals are for the ones who keep waking up. A woman passes you a jar of peach preserves and whispers, "In case tomorrow's worse." You want to cry. You don't. You just nod and slip it into your coat like a holy relic. The music lingers, like smoke after a fire. You step outside. The stars are the same, distant, silent, ancient. But tonight, they don't feel cruel. They just feel tired, like you. You walk home slower than usual, not because you're afraid, because for once, no one is chasing you. The path is familiar. Every rut, every frozen puddle, every ghost you've stepped around too many times to count. At your door, you pause. Not for long. Just enough to remember this night. Then you go inside. You sit. You breathe. You untie your boots. And for once, for the first time in what feels like centuries, you lie down and don't dream of teeth, or wolves, or burning rafters. You dream of fiddle strings, of the warmth of bread, of hands that gave without asking. You were never safe in this place, but you were never forgotten either. And somehow, that's enough. Now just breathe. The fires are out. The noise has gone. You're not running anymore, not from gunshots, not from fever, not from rising water in the middle of the night. You're here, wrapped in stillness, held. Let your bones grow heavy. Let the century fall away, plank by plank, breath by breath, until all that's left is you and the slow, steady rhythm of your heart, like an old clock ticking in the quiet corner of a wooden house. The past was sharp, messy, brutal, but it was real, and you walked through it, barefoot, bleeding, belly laughing through the dust. You danced between saloon fights and snowstorms. You stitched wounds with your own hands. You looked death in the eye more times than you can count. And you didn't crumble. You didn't even flinch. Let that sink in. You made it. Now, the sky is darker, the air cooler. The rope swings empty. The wolves have wandered off. The floodwater's gone. Even the fever has grown quiet, curled up somewhere distant, forgotten. Tonight, you don't need a knife under your pillow, just a blanket. And maybe, if you want, that jar of peach preserves, the one given to you by someone who knew the truth. Tomorrow might still be hard, but tonight could be soft. You earned this silence. You earned this rest. Let the echoes fade. Let the stars hum their ancient lullaby. Let the past sleep beside you like an old dog, tired, loyal, and done chasing. And now, just drift down, softly now, into sleep. If you've made it all the way to the end, leave a comment and tell me what story you'd like to hear next. I genuinely enjoy seeing and reading every kind word you share. Thank you for watching. Sweet dreams and good night.